Turning up voter turnout. In 2016, a major concern for Americans was that Russia was tapping in to major social media platforms as well as the polls to sway voters on who they'd vote for and voter turnout in general. As situations like this have happened throughout American history, what if I told you that the major issue with voter turnout was the voter? As I get older and I learn more about politics through history classes and through the media, I've really come to value the phrase, actions speak louder than words. Major political discrepancies have unfolded in the past 4 years, and major protests have evolved that have made me think that society really needs to understand the true value of a vote. Today I will be explaining to you lack of voter turnout, the problems it causes, and the solution. In the article Voter Turnout in Presidential Elections from UC Santa Barbara, 55.67% of people over 18 voted in the 2016 election. That means around 45% of eligible Americans didn't vote when they could have. So, young people make up a significant percentage of the people not voting, and this is a common trend throughout historical elections. So one of the major reasons that young people can't vote is because they have busy schedules, whether it be for school or work, that they just can't make it to the polls. Another reason is that the American education system is not doing enough to explain to young people how you vote and how to decide who to vote for. In the article Why So Few Americans Vote in Conversation US by John Holbein, politicians appeal more to voters than to the number of Americans who care about politics. So there's this huge percentage of people that care about politics, but this many are actually going out and voting. So the direct effect of this is that officials are elected more so by older generations and therefore older policies, and the indirect effect of that would be that over time, when people aren't appreciating the people that are elected into office, it creates political unrest and protests like these ones. In an examination of the electorate based on validated voters from Pew Research Center, we find out that 28% of people who voted in the 2016 election in the 18 to 29 age range voted for Trump, meaning that of the young people who did vote, a lot of them didn't support him, which is why so many of these protests are unfolding. So what is the first solution that we can use for this? I believe the first solution that could help is increased education. So current teens are not really educated on the whole adulting thing, which means we don't learn about credit score, taxes, voting, anything like that. This is because in 1983, Ronald Reagan signed the Carl D. Perkins Vocational and Technical Education Act, according to No Life Skills, How Americans Abandoned Home Economics and Adulting by Cameron LeBlanc at fatherly.com, which basically shifted education from teaching about life skills to teaching about trade skills like vocational jobs, etc., learning to create a life in your career path. So the drawback of bringing education back that would teach us life skills is that it wouldn't account for voters that simply couldn't make voting a part of their schedule. Even if everyone does understand who they want to vote for and why it's necessary, it doesn't mean that they can necessarily fit it into their schedules. So the second possible solution is to penalize people for not voting. So if all eligible Americans voted, politicians like Obama believe that it would reshape the entire political scene in America, because representatives would actually represent what people wanted and not just the 55% of people who actually vote. This would fuel tons of change in America. So an example of compulsory laws working like that is seatbelts. Not everyone agrees with seatbelts, but we wear them because we could get fined if we don't, and because of safety, but that's not ultimately what matters when it comes to politics and the law. The one major drawback, though, about making voting mandatory is that the First Amendment right allows people to have freedom of speech, but it also allows them to remain silent. Forcing people to vote means that you take away their right to not have an opinion at all. So, what is the best solution overall? I believe that the best solution is increased accessibility. So lack of education does impact people not voting, but ultimately it's time constraints that stop people from voting. According to Increasing Voter Participation in America by Danielle Root in the Center for American Progress, online and same-day registration, as well as the ability to vote from home, are proven to increase voter turnout by hundreds of thousands, according to statistics in Georgia and Colorado and other states that implement laws like this. Additionally, forcing people to vote out of obligation would really result in people voting out on a whim, but expanding the options people have to vote out of choice would mean that more people who care about politics are able to vote and work it into their schedules. So, sorry about that. So politics are an integral part of American society, which is why it really upsets me that only around half the population votes. I've given you reason to support mandatory voting as well as, sorry, I just completely blanked. To support mandatory voting as well as higher education, but I hope you now understand that the biggest way to improve voter turnout would be to increase the accessibility people have to vote. It really saddens me that so many young Americans are involved in major political movements, but they make up the largest percentage of Americans that don't vote. America was built on free speech, but we must remember to take those opinions to the polls. That way our voices are heard in the form of votes and not in the form of chants. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.